I'm good.
What were you saying, Greg?
About just books are bad at pricing minutes for the playoffs. I was pretty sure Maxey was going to play the entire game yesterday, and his props were like normal.
I know, like 25.5 points. Yeah, dominated too. That logo shot to tie the game.
It was sick.
That was sick. Don't get me wrong. He took that. I'm like, what are you doing, man? Because he still had a lot of time on the clock. Like he gave.
Yeah, I think it left his hands with 10 seconds left.
Yeah. Knicks got it back with, I think, 6. And I'm thinking, oh man, you gave him another possession, but it worked. It worked. Those Embiid PRA unders still hit though with overtime, which is wild. Anyway, happy to have you guys with us. Welcome to the Stochastic.com MLB live before lock early game action today. 8 games on the slate. And then you've got a decent one tomorrow or tonight as well. So we got live before lock tonight. We got live before lock for baseball tonight. We got live before lock now. 2-game NBA live before lock on top of that. So glad you guys could join us. We're going to dig in. First things first, there's no doubt about it. If you've even taken a cursory look at this slate, there's 2 pitchers that are just standing out among everybody else. Then there's a third that's around 27% owned right now in a mid-range price. Musgrove's an odd one. We're going to get into it, but that's why Greg Ehrenberg's here with me. What's up, brother?
Yeah, man. It's a lot going on. We got 2 baseball slates, like you said. There's a basketball slate, and also a little bit of a surprise for people because Josh is out today. He's doing some family stuff. So we got Ryan Rinpack is jumping on NBA Live Before Lock with Eric. So that'll be cool tonight. So yeah, we got stuff throughout the day here, starting with today's early baseball slate we're breaking down.
Very nice. Man, Rinpack, because he has great knowledge, but he improved his game on shows dramatically over the past couple of years.
Yeah, for sure. And I was talking with Ryan also a couple days ago. He wants to do more of the post-lock shows as well. So I told him he's open invitation. He could jump on with us whenever we want. So I think he's going to start jumping on some of the post-lock shows with us as well.
Should be fun. Worth watching for sure. Hey, guys, if you don't mind, maybe take 1 single second out of your afternoon. Look, we got day baseball. Is there anything better than a large day baseball slate? Come on. Maybe you're at work on break. Who knows? Maybe you're home. Doesn't matter. Day baseball is awesome. Show us some love. Take 1 single second. Tone for your sincere. Hit that thumbs up. Subscribe to the channel. It goes a very long way for us. We appreciate you in advance. So if you haven't done so yet, subtle reminder, tap that. Only takes a second. Anyway, 8 games, man. Look, I'll be honest with you. We won't do this. We would never shortchange you guys, ever. This does feel like one of those slates we could break down in 25 minutes.
A lot of slates you could break down in not that long amount of time.
Not me.
You know, but also we try to make sure there's no stones unturned. We answer any questions you guys have. But yeah, I mean, if we wrap up at a quarter of or something, we're not going to sit here and wait to withhold information for you just to extend the show out. So if you guys have questions for us, great. We'll certainly answer any of them. If you're a Stochastic sub, one of the perks of being a subscriber to any of the packages we have here, you get access to the Discord channel. I'll have that open so we can answer any questions you guys have. But yeah, we're not gonna hold you guys here for an hour to give you information if there aren't any questions or anything like that.
No, all I meant was that it's one. I don't want to say it's cut and dry, but like there are some very obvious. Before I even looked at any ownership or top pitchers or top stacks, I just took a very quick look on DraftKings at who was on this. And you just look down for 2 seconds and you already know like where these popular pitchers are going to be, right? It's pretty obvious. Zach Wheeler, and we're going to dive into it now because here's the good thing about all this. We have the lineup simulator, the contest simulator, sorry, the lineup generator, all of that stuff, the top pitchers tool, top stacks tool. They don't just tell you what the ownership is. You're getting leverage scores, you're getting top 2 probabilities, all of that stuff. That goes a very long way, like top value for the top stacks tool and all of that. So there's a lot more nuance to it than just like, well, yeah, he's in a good spot today. But you would agree that on the surface, Zach Wheeler against the Troutless Angels team stands out. You don't even have to know baseball particularly well to know that him, and then Chris Sale against one of the heaviest strikeout teams in one of the most favorable pitcher parks in Seattle. Those two guys are going to jump off the page at you, even if you just started playing baseball DFS this year.
Yeah, I mean, these are actually my favorite slates because there is extremely pronounced chalk. And that's where I think there's the most potential to either manipulate ownership, find where you're going to be overweight to the field, find where you're going to be underweight to the field, find where you're going to be getting leverage. Some of the 13-game baseball slates, the reason I don't really like them is it takes away a lot of the strategy I like to implement in baseball, where then it's just kind of like, all right, which teams are going to do the best when you're looking at a 12, 13, 11 games later, or whatever it may be. For a slate like this, we actually get to implement more game theory. We get to take ownership into consideration. So there's more strategy involved.
Jeffrey, just mailmanning out here trying to win a GPP. Hell yeah. Aren't you mean mail personing, correct, Jeffrey?
Isn't well, no, because he could tell you whether he's a mailman or not.
What do you mean?
He could say that he's a mailman. If he's a mailman, he's a mailman.
He's a mail person.
Well, I mean, it's up to him, though. He gets to decide. You can't tell him what he is. You can't say that he's...
I'm just telling him what they tell us he's supposed to be.
You're saying he's a they.
I did not say that. I did not say that. That's awesome, though, Jeffrey. Out there. Jeffrey the mailman trying to win a GPP. I hope... Question, though, dude. If you're delivering mail, let's assume you're in a mail truck. Are you... you building lineups as you drive? Or are you coming out to mailbox, maybe take a little...
It's probably a federal offense. I think he's admitted to a crime.
I think that's probably a federal offense, yeah. But yeah, good stuff, man. And Michael, please don't try to be politically correct. Do you think I'm serious? All right, let's get into some of these. You guys have watched these shows long enough. So Zach Wheeler, though, I mean, look, it's a really good spot. The fact that Mike Trout is out of this lineup does them no favors at all. Like, I mean, he was leading the league in home runs last I looked, yesterday or the day before, off to a torrid start on the season. Now you wipe him from the lineup. This is not an imposing lineup at all. And Wheeler's been dominant, you know, phenomenal strikeout stuff, great swinging strike stuff. The park, look, the park isn't great for pitching, but it's certainly not like Coors Field or Citizens Bank Park or Great American in the summer, you know? So I'm not surprised he's as chalky as he is. My question really for you is, and let me point one more thing out to you, Greg, get your thoughts. Usually when you see a guy at this ownership, they're very negatively leveraged. We see that all the time. Like the 40% guys pull, you know, negative 16% leverage, which is just looking at their top two probability. He only has minus 3.9% negative leverage because he has a 33% chance of being a top two pitcher on DraftKings today.
Yeah, and we'll get this out of the way. We had a bunch of these where we could just kind of do this right out of the top. So for anybody who's playing cash games today, Wheeler and Sale. There you go. Lock them in. Easy. You started your lineup on the right track there. But there is an interesting discussion to be had in large field tournaments, what we want to do with these guys' ownerships, and then also who it is that we're going to be prioritizing amongst the two of them. And all of our data indicates that in between Chris Sale and Zach Wheeler, I would be preferring to get to Wheeler, and I'm getting to a lot of Sale as well, but I have more exposure to Wheeler. So relative to what the field is projected to do, I'm a little bit overweight to the field on Zach Wheeler, a little bit underweight to the field on Chris Sale. Once again, not because I'm like anti-Sale for this slate. It's just that there are other pitchers I want to get exposure to as well. And then when I look also at some of the top pitchers' scores, like you referenced, we do have Wheeler with a 33% chance to be the top scoring pitcher, 26% for Chris Sale. We've got comparable ownership between the two of them. And it's hard to really not love this spot for Zach Wheeler against the Angels. If you guys remember last year, second half of the season when Trout was out for the Angels, this is even when they had Shohei Ohtani, pitchers were chalk against them every single time they went out, and they were succeeding more often than not. And now there isn't even Shohei Ohtani there.
Exactly. Brian, also out here delivering mail route. Just subscribe to the lineup generator. Hell yeah, man. Today's the last day. $5 for the week. So if you haven't done so yet, last day we're running this promo, $5 for the entire week. So 7 straight days of baseball for the lineup generator, less than $1 a day. Phenomenal deal. Link in the description and in the chat. We'll talk about that later. Matthew, do you guys like Wheeler over 9.5 Ks on Prize Picks? So that must be one of those demons, right? Because there's no way that his standard prop or his standard line on Prize Picks is 9.5 Ks.
I'd
It's
have to
not.
pull
I
up
mean, I
Prize
pulled
Picks.
it up.
I'm going to assume. I
It's
assume
not. I
you're
pulled it
right
up on
because
OddsShopper.
yeah,
Under
it's
7.5 is even money on DraftKings.
yeah. So it has to be the standard line has to be 7.5 or 8.5
Yeah.
over on Prize Picks.
Does Prize Picks do flatline without the hook? Because I know Underdog does. Like if there's a line with a little too much juice on either side, they'll take a 7.5 and make it a 7, or a 7.5 and make it an 8. Does Prize Picks do that?
Usually. Yeah. I mean, not always, but like if there's a line that's really heavily juiced, you could see the half strikeout total, or you'd see the full strikeout instead of like the half. So it could be the 8 instead of the 7.5. That's what I'm guessing it is, but I'd have to pull it up on Prize Picks.
Okay. So do I like Wheeler over 9.5? I don't know what the payout is on that. I don't know. I mean, he could definitely give you 10 Ks in this spot. There's no doubt about that. But yeah, his prop right now, like Pinnacle has under 7.5, juiced minus 133. But yeah, look, he's a phenomenal play today. And then you've got Chris Sale behind him. Greg, with right now, Chris Sale, by the way, Wheeler's expensive and Chris Sale's pretty expensive, but Chris Sale's going up against Seattle, good park. They're both getting 38% ownership here. Sale definitely more negatively leveraged than Wheeler is. How difficult is it to build lineups with the two of them today?
It's pretty hard. So if you are going to do it, you only have a few stacks to potentially choose from. What the field is doing is going towards the Twins. There is an insanely popular build on DraftKings today. It is Zach Wheeler, Chris Sale, Twin stacks. That's what like a 20% of the field or 15% of the field is going to be doing. That is a lineup build that if you're trying to build the lineups that project for the most fantasy points, that's it. But just know you're going to be competing with a lot of lineups if you do that. So that's why I had to pick and choose, where for my lineups, I wasn't able to get overweight to both Zach Wheeler and Chris Sale. I'm prioritizing Wheeler, being a little bit underweight to the field on Chris Sale. I do have some lineups where they are together, but I found other ways to be contrarian with my stacks in those lineups. We'll talk about more of them when we get to offenses, because there are some very low-owned stacks and some that are good leverage situations that I think you could have a very unique lineup that has Sale and Wheeler together. But for the most part, I do think we have to choose whether we want to be overweight to Wheeler or Sale today.
Which then leads you to Bailey Ober, right? Naturally. Like it's going to lead you to Bailey Ober. This is somebody who, last game, and really more than one game, but Bailey Ober has been very good recently. And you had him coming off of a start last time out where he was chalky. There's no doubt about it. Against the Angels, of course. 8 strikeouts, 7 1/3 innings pitched. Really solid game. Prior to that, 6 1-run frames with 6 Ks against Detroit. You look at Bailey Ober, dude, outside of the first start of the season where he got absolutely tuned up in Kansas City, he's been very, very good.
He certainly has. He's a really good matchup, and I'm barely playing him today. And also, I referenced leverage before, ways you can get different. I think the most reasonable way to get different is to stack against Bailey Ober today. This is going to enable you to do a couple of things. My single entry stack, I'm stacking the White Sox, and then my pitchers are Zach Wheeler and Chris Sale. So we've got 3 pitchers today that are really popular, and all understandably, Zach Wheeler, Chris Sale, Bailey Ober. So if we're assuming that those are the 3 pitchers that are making up almost all of the ownership in single entry contest, if I stack against Bailey Ober and that stack happens to do well, I'm killing off Ober. I have a stack that's doing well, and I'm still exposing myself to the 2 pitchers I like the most on the slate, but in a way that's different while also getting leverage. I really like those kinds of lineup builds today. Bailey Ober is not a great pitcher. He's had okay results so far this year. You did mention that his numbers probably a little bit better than what they appear to be just because they are thrown off a little bit by that first start of the season. but still, he's a guy who's a 4.21 ERA, a 3.76 expected ERA. He doesn't generate that many strikeouts. He's a 24.5% K rate. Fine, but not like spectacular or anything like that. There are very few slates where I think Bailey Ober is warranting being a super chalky pitcher. So I don't have an issue with the matchup he has. I don't really have an issue with Bailey Ober himself individually. I just think he's too popular.
I get it. What I don't get, though, is Joe Musgrove pulling 20% today. I mean, this guy, first of all, if you're talking about, let's say this ownership holds, and he really is, because we're what, an hour away from lock, less than that. He's 20% owned. The home run issue that he has had this season so far, not just bad, but legitimately problematic, Greg. He's coughed up 6 home runs over his last 2 games, and he's still missing some bats, but there's some issues here with Joe Musgrove. I think he's been, a little bit unlucky, but not really. Like 72% strand rate. Sure, his 350 BABIP should come down. But he has a 6.59 FIP, 7.36 xERA in these spots. These are some weird numbers. 36% ground balls and a 21% home run to fly ball rate. I mean, Cincinnati's not the best baseball team, but there is some pop in this lineup. And Musgrove currently pulling north of 20%. That was surprising to me.
He's so cheap that I understand how it ends up being that's where his ownership ends up being, because I'm not all that different from the field. And there's not a lot you could point to in Musgrove's numbers this year that indicates he's been good, because he hasn't. He's been terrible. He's not generating strikeouts. His velocity has been down a little bit relative to last year. The ERA is bad. The FIP is bad. The expected ERA is bad. The only thing you could really lean on when it comes to Joe Musgrove is that he has been an excellent pitcher for a very, very long time now. And I think more likely than not, he does get back to form some point. And he's priced so cheaply right now, where the question becomes going forward for me, is he going to rebound to become a more expensive pitcher? Or is this just the new normal for Joe Musgrove, which if that's the case, we should probably be stacking against him with the Cincinnati Reds. So I am like right around the field with Joe Musgrove, and it's solely because of what his price point is, what the other pitchers are that are priced around him. And then also the fact that we've had how many years now, dating back to 2018, Joe Musgrove has had underlying numbers that suggest he's a top of the rotation type of starter. I'm not totally willing to throw out, 6 seasons of data because he started off the season with 7 bad starts. As bad as these starts have been and as alarming as some of the numbers are, I do think he's going to turn it around at some point, but a real stand. I've got 20% of him.
Okay. Want to hear something wild though? Last year he pitched almost 100 innings. He had 14 barreled balls against him. This year in 35 innings, he has 13. Like the launch angle's way up. Look, here's all else. When they're hitting fly balls, they're leaving the yard. Like that's one thing that we've seen with Joe Musgrove thus far this season. So I actually do have some interest in the Cincinnati bats. It's also entirely possible, like you said, that Musgrove figures it out. Sure. But Cincinnati's getting 4% ownership here. I know they don't look all that good in our top stacks tool, but I think sometimes you have to account for the fact that like the projections also aren't going to heavily weight Musgrove's early season struggles either. And I'm not saying they should, Greg. I'm not saying they should, but like there's a lot of data that they're pulling from outside of just these few starts, but maybe something is wrong with them. So I think Cincinnati's actually a better stack than they appear just because of his struggles. What if they continue?
Yeah. I mean, there's a chance that he is just not good right now. It could be because he's dealing with an injury. His average fastball velocity was 93.2 miles per hour this year, or it was 93.2 last year. It's 92.5 this year. So not a crazy drop, but anytime there is a drop in velocity, you do have to ask, is he potentially dealing with an injury? And he also, negative 0.5 wins above replacement. I don't know all of the pitchers off the top of my head, what their WAR is for the year, but Joe Musgrove has a case for being the worst pitcher in baseball so far this year. But I'm okay with getting some exposure to him. Also stacking against him a little bit because he's been bad this year. That warrants some interest in the Reds. Well, at the same time, too, Joe Musgrove has a track record of being good enough to where he's cheap, where I'm willing to take some chances on him getting back to form, but not any kind of real stand for me there.
Yeah, I agree on both fronts. Like, they're both viable in a spot like this. I was just a little bit surprised to see him getting that ownership. He is not expensive. And then the other thing too is once you get past Wheeler, Sale, and Bailey Ober, there's not like you have Chris Bassett against Kansas City, Eflin at Milwaukee, Sandoval against Philly. I don't know. I mean, I'm debating, do I get to some Quinn Priester today against Oakland?
Which also, that's one of the other reasons that Joe Musgrove lands in some of my lineups. Like we said before, it's not all that possible to just have all your lineups be Wheeler and Sale as your two pitching options. Then also, I think Bailey Ober is the most over-owned pitcher on the entire slate. So if I want to be underweight to the field on Bailey Ober, and it's hard to build lineups with Wheeler and Sale together, I only have so many other options to go to.
I know. I mean, Chris Bassett, I think, has to at least be in the conversation, right?
I have more exposure to Bassett than I do to Ober. And it's once again just really more of well, not exactly totally an ownership play because there is still some ownership here going to Chris Bassett, but Chris Bassett at home against the Kansas City Royals, he's a pitcher who in the past I haven't been all that high on, but I do think Chris Bassett has a track record of being a better pitcher than Bailey Ober. And going forward this season, I also think Chris Bassett is likely to be a better pitcher than Bailey Ober. He's got a matchup against the Kansas City Royals team that I do think is going to be regressing going forward. And we've also seen Bassett, while he does give up some power this year, he's giving up hard contact. He also can work deep into games. That's a way that there's kind of like hidden upside in some of these veteran sorts of pitchers where even if he has a strikeout rate that is barely over 20%, 21% for the season, this is a guy who has a track record of being healthy, working deep into games, and you get an extra inning, extra, 4 or 5 outs out of him. It does help mitigate some of the lesser strikeout rate that he has.
If you were looking at let's see, we have 7 guys, Greg, above 10%. All right. Well, I'm just taking an arbitrary number here, but bear with me for a second. Like Wheeler and Sale, we agree. While it's difficult to get both of them in the same lineup, we agree that they're far and away the 2 best pitching options on this slate, correct?
Absolutely.
Okay. You're looking at Bailey Ober as significantly overowned. I do get it. The tools bear that out. God, it's just such a terrible White Sox lineup. Among those 4, Bailey Ober, Joe Musgrove, Stripling's getting 20% at 6,200, and Chris Bassett, I'll actually 5, Zach Eflin. Do you have any clear favorite of that group? Because Bailey Ober's your clear, Ober's your clear non-favorite.
Yeah, if we're taking ownership into consideration, we're not talking about like a cash game pitcher. It's not Ober. Ober, we've got projected for ownership in the mid 20% range. I've got a little bit over 10% of Bailey Ober.
Okay.
So the options were who were talking Eflin, Lugo, Bassett, Ober. Were those the guys?
No, I was just taking guys north above 10%, but not the Sale and Wheeler. So Eflin, okay. Bassett, Stripling, Musgrove, and Ober. Those 5.
I've got mid 20% exposure in my lineups to Musgrove, Stripling, and Bassett. There's not one of these guys I want to like attach myself to and be like, this is the guy who makes or breaks me today. But I am underweight to Bailey Ober. And then in turn, I've got that ownership distributed to guys like Musgrove, Stripling, Bassett to get them in just over 20% of my lineups.
So that's exactly where I was kind of going with here. It feels like one of these spots where you just mix and match with a lot of these guys once you get past the Wheeler and Sale lineups.
Yeah, that's where I'm at. And then, I mean, still, I've got Wheeler in half my lineups, Chris Sale in 37% of my lineups. So then you take that into consideration. I only have about 110% exposure to divvy up amongst all the remaining pitchers.
Yep. I get it. So are there any, like I mentioned, Quinn Priester against Oakland? It's Oakland. This isn't a play on Quinn Priester. This would be a play on Oakland and a fade on Ober and Musgrove, honestly. Like that's kind of the reason this looks at least remotely appealing to me, Greg. It's twofold, right? Threefold actually. One, similar price range, 7K range. So you have Ober and Musgrove there getting 26 and 20% respectively ownership. Then you have Priester getting 5% ownership. The second part is it's against Oakland in a really favorable park. And Oakland doesn't even have a high implied total on this slate. Last I looked, they were sitting at 4, right? One of the lower on the slate. And then third, while he only has a 9% top 2 pitcher probability, he's positively leveraged, and Ober's only at 13%. Musgrove's only at 14%. So it does feel like Priester, say what you want about him, I don't think he's particularly good either. It does feel like he's under-owned in context to the other pitchers in this price range getting crazy ownership on an 8-gamer.
Yeah, I don't have double-digit exposure to any of these guys who are low-owned around here, but I also think you did hit on something that is, pretty relevant, which is the top value odds of a lot of these pitchers. It's very similar to the top value odd on Bailey Ober. And if we're going to pay up for some offenses, you're getting a big ownership discount for a bunch of pitchers that on a points per dollar sense are projecting similarly to Bailey Ober. So I don't mind taking shots on guys like Patrick Sandoval or Quinn Priester, but they're the guys who are going to be in like 5% of my lineups.
Are there any other guys down here? We had some comments in chat about Seth Lugo going up against Toronto. By the way, Matt Bellman and I talked a ton about Cole Reagans yesterday on the strategy show going up against the same Toronto team. And he had a calf cramp, so he ended up leaving that game midway through the 7th. But he is so good. I know he got blown up by Baltimore a few starts ago, but Cole Reagans is awesome, man.
Yeah. He's having a really good year. He did leave the game with cramps in the later going. I mean, he was at like 100 pitches anyway, so it probably wasn't going to make any difference in his fantasy output. But yeah, he was a slate breaker last night. And see, where's Cy Young odds at now?
That's a great question because so many pitchers are injured. I know you liked Sonny Gray, and then he went down. No, Bieber, right? Shane Bieber.
Yeah. I bet Bieber to win Cy Young, and I think I placed the bet in like 3 hours later. He was ruled out for the season.
Dude, I watched your video. I watched your short on the Odd Shopper channel, and later that day, the Bieber news came across my feed. Yeah, that sucked, dude. Plus, you got amazing value on that too.
Yeah, it was funny the way it worked because I noticed his odds were pretty long and just so many pitchers were getting hurt. I bet him. The line actually ended up moving a ton after I bet it. So I got like all this, I don't even know if you call it closing line value because it didn't even close. Like there was another baseball game didn't even happen. He gets ruled out for the year. It's honestly maybe a little bit gun shy to bet on Cy Young odds this year just because the pitchers are dropping off so quickly. But if I did have to bet somebody right now, Reagans is now 16-1. His odds have actually come down a good amount. He was 7-1, I think, a couple weeks ago or so. So if I had to bet somebody, it would be him. It's just so volatile with the amount of pitcher injuries.
I mean, look, you're the go-to guy. You're my go-to guy when it comes to futures. So I don't actually hate that call. Who else, not to derail this, but we have plenty of time. Mm-hmm. Who else in the AL would you say is viable for the Cy Young right now?
Yeah, so we've got guys like Screwball and Corbin Burns. They're the betting favorites, but the odds are so short, they're not playable. Like I'm not betting Screwball at plus 300 or Corbin Burns at plus 350 to win Cy Young with this amount of time left in the season. That's terrible value.
And with the injuries, like like you just made a great point. If I'm going to bet a Cy Young, I'm not betting I'm not getting like good money down on a 3-1 to win. I'd rather at least take a shot on a Reagans at 16-1.
Yeah, because even there's no pitcher who I could say has even like a 70% chance of staying healthy for the season. So if you're just right away just saying like, hey, this guy's got like a 30% chance of getting hurt and getting missing significant time to the point where they're ineligible to win this Cy Young, I just can't bet somebody who's like plus 300 or plus 350. If I'm looking at all the odds here, the pitchers that I would say relative to their betting odds are the best choices for an AL Cy Young I would say Ragan's at 16-1, and the other one would be George Kirby at 25-1. He is looking like a totally different pitcher this year with his ability to generate more strikeouts, which he wasn't doing in the past. And also, I think that maybe we can make a case because he doesn't have as much mileage on him that maybe he's a little bit safer to not get hurt. But he's 25-1. I think he was like 60-1 a couple of weeks ago or so. His odds moved a ton after his last start that he had. So if I had to bet, and I'm not betting either of these, but if I had to right now, those would be the two I would choose.
So that kind of dovetails perfectly into this Lugo conversation. David Porter said, Laffy dancing all around Lugo. Dude, I'll tell you how I feel about Seth. First of all, I think it's preposterous that he's more expensive than Cole Reagan's was yesterday. That is insane to me. Yes, Lugo's been good on paper, no doubt. And he's coming off, shit, is that his best start ever last time out against Detroit? The issue that I have, Greg, is you're still talking about a pitcher that has an 8% swinging strike rate, a 15% strikeout rate, and we're paying north of $8K for him against Toronto. Yeah, Toronto, went out there against the lefty, and they've been good against lefties. They haven't struck out much over the last couple of seasons. And Cole Reagan's, gave it to him. Like 8,200 on Lugo when, he had 9 Ks last game, but clearly doesn't have elite strikeout stuff. That is just too expensive for me.
15% carry rate, like you said. And then I know a lot of people are just going to be like, hey, 1.66 ERA for Seth Lugo. His underlying numbers all suggest he's just been ridiculously lucky. He has a 267 BABIP. That's not sustainable. He's an 89.6% strand rate. That's not sustainable. So he's getting lucky on balls in play. He's getting lucky with sequencing. Ultimately, if a pitcher is going to be walking some amount of hitters, isn't striking out anybody, it's going to be an issue at some point. Another thing, too, is he has very consistently over the course of his career been a pitcher who has an above average home run to fly ball rate. This year, it's only 4.3%.
Yeah.
And he also has a career low fastball velocity. His velocity is tanked this year, which is also another kind of concern here. I'm very, very positive that Seth Lugo is going to be regressing in the near future.
How do you feel about this? Probably isn't the conversation chat wanted to hear, but how do you feel about Toronto bats today?
Let me see. The stacking side of things. Yeah, I like Toronto as a stack quite a bit. It's a team that isn't picking up all that much ownership. We've got Toronto projected, for 5% ownership today, going up against a pitcher who there isn't leverage because Seth Lugo isn't getting play either. But there's a very low-owned team in Toronto going up against a pitcher who I'm very certain is not going to be all that good going forward. So as a low-owned team, I like being overweight to them as a stack.
Honestly, something has to give here eventually. Unless Seth Lugo is just going to have some type of sun run throughout the entire season, it seems unlikely that he can keep this up. It's sub 40% ground balls too. It's not like, you and I have seen this plenty of times. Everybody has. We've seen it where like a guy can just induce ground balls at an elite clip, and that kind of buoys their production, even if they're not a good strikeout pitcher, right? Like Marcus Stroman's the type of guy that can give you 25 fantasy points because he goes 7 innings scoreless with 4 strikeouts, but only gives up 2 hits and gets the win. Do you see anything? The thing about baseball, you can look under the hood and uncover so much for pitching. Unlike any sport, there's so many stats and metrics that you can look up. And sure, you can skew things to fit your narrative pretty easily when it comes to baseball as well. I've always said, Greg, like you could give me a player and I could tell you why they're a great player or why they're a terrible play, and out of both sides of my mouth. It's doable. But I'm not seeing anything that makes Lugo outside of his performance thus far that makes him somebody where you'd think that this is sustainable production.
Yeah, not at all. Also, kind of a funny thing as we were talking about this, Grayson Rodriguez is the 5th best odds to win Cy Young. He just went on the injured list with a shoulder injury. Wow. 3 minutes after we were just talking about all the pitchers and betting guys with Cy Young odds and getting hurt. So yeah, Grayson Rodriguez, who was 20-1 to win Cy Young, and now he's on the injured list. So he's probably going to drop out now as well.
I may make a 1-unit play on Cole Reagan's, honestly.
Okay.
I want to make sure he doesn't hit the IL though, because even though it's just cramps, If it ends up being like a calf strain or something, we've seen how long that can keep guys out. You know? Yeah, man. The rest of the pitching though, and we'll take your guys' questions in chat and in Discord, and all of that stuff if you have them. Do we have anybody else? Like,
Not a pitcher.
I don't think so either. I'm going to take one more look.
Yeah. Grayson Rodriguez, by the way, just dropped to a 39-1 to win Cy Young because of the injury there.
Shit, at this point, man, maybe Emerson Hancock against Atlanta. They have been dormant. I'm not doing it, but. Oh, okay. Last one. Feel free to just say no. I assume that'll be the case, but like we say, no stone unturned here. Miles Mikolas against Detroit, 2% ownership. Any interest?
It's funny. Einsteinium just left a question in chat that I was about to read off where he asked us, is Miles Mikolas good enough to be a pivot off of Ross Stripling? Let me check what my exposure is here. My top 150 lineups have Mikolas in 3 of those 150. So the answer is no. He's not the kind of guy I really like to get to almost ever. It would have to be like a 3-game slate where he's not picking up any kind of ownership or anything like that. There's no realistic upside there. He doesn't strike out anybody. He gives up runs also. He's not a particularly good pitcher. I very seldomly get any kind of exposure to Mikolas.
What's the difference in upside between Mikolas and Stripling, though?
Yeah, so the biggest difference between Mikolas and Stripling
is their $300 price.
We are projecting him to be considerably better. Stripling, we have Stripling with a 12.6% chance to be a top scoring pitcher, whereas Mikolas is at 6.7%. Let's compare them here.
I think it's razor thin, man. The margins here when it comes to the difference between these guys. I really do. I haven't looked at their K rates. My guess is they're very similar from Mikolas to Stripling.
Yeah, pulling up their numbers. Mikolas this year. Fangraphs always does this. When 18%. I try to, it takes so long for the pages to load sometimes. All right, here we go.
18.
Right. So Mikolas's K rate, what'd you say it is?
18%. And Stripling's K rate is 16.9.
Yeah, so Stripling hasn't really generated all that many strikeouts this year either. So that is that's certainly notable. One thing that does make a pretty significant difference in terms of strikeout potential, though, is Stripling is pitching at home, whereas Miles Mikolas is on the road. The reason that matters is that it's just kind of like human nature, where you will see home plate umpires skew calls more towards home pitchers than away pitchers. So that's where I do think there's a little bit more upside in Ross Stripling, just considering he's pitching at home, he's cheaper. That's why our projection is a lot higher on Stripling than it is on Mikolas. Also, if you look at the team totals,
they're very similar, like 4-3, 4-2 or something.
Yeah, we've got 4-3 for the Pirates against Stripling. It's actually 4-8 for the Tigers against Mikolas.
Yeah, I see that in the tools. I didn't think it was actually 4-8, but yeah, dude, 4-8's high. I don't know. It's just funny. Like we don't need to belabor this. It's just like you even look at both of these guys versus righties this year, right? You've got Detroit 25% strikeout rate, 9% walk rate. Pittsburgh 24% strikeout rate, 10% walk rate. Detroit 91 WRC plus. That's not great. 79 for Pittsburgh. The big difference here really is that Pittsburgh has a sub 100 ISO against righties, whereas Detroit at 137 is actually in the top half of the league. I'm sorry, no, they're 20th. So I don't know. I think it's a great question from Einsteinium, though. I really do think they're more equal than they appear.
I also think Stripling's probably a little bit more likely to go deeper into the game. In 6 starts this year, Mikolas has pitched 32 innings. We've gotten a little bit more length out of Ross Stripling. So the recent starts, that we've seen out of Mikolas. He's gone 5 2/3 innings, 4 2/3 innings, 4 2/3 innings, whereas Stripling's recent start's been 5 2/3, 5 2/3, and 6 innings. So you're probably getting like an extra inning out of Stripling, which also adds a little bit to his projection. But like neither of them are outstanding or anything like that. I just slightly prefer Ross Stripling for various reasons across the board. Better pitcher's park, pitching at home, slightly better matchup. So all those things kind of compound and make Ross Stripling project slightly better.
I get it. I just keep coming back to the 20% to 2% ownership. That's
ideally the answer would be neither of them. If you guys are playing
that's the correct answer.
If you guys are playing one lineup today, don't play either of these guys. You don't have to get any of these clowns in your lineup. Me being somebody who's playing a bunch of lineups, I have to play some just absolute idiot goofballs who are cheap to save some salary at some point. That's where some of these idiots get in my lineup, and then I'll be like, hey, why did I not win a GPP today? It's like, all right, because I have Ross Stripling exposure.
Yep. Yeah. Look, it is what it is. I just think the 20% to 2% is nuts. Let's talk some stacks here. Jordan, pull up the lineup generator. Like I said, guys, link in the description and in chat. Last day to take advantage of this promo. We've been running it for the week. If you've been on the fence, no better time to jump in than now. You're getting 7 days every day for 7 days for $5, well under $1 a day.
It probably has the late slate in it.
Oh, okay. Even so, like you're still getting 7 days.
I was just saying for building lineups on the show, it probably has the late slate in it.
Good. You got plenty of time.
Yeah.
And one of the things too is like, even if you're think about it, even if you're only playing $5-10 a day, whatever it is, it's still $5 for the entirety of the week. You play $10 over the course of what, 7 days, talking $70 in volume. And I'm just talking like if you're playing nothing, still worth checking it out, giving it a test drive. You can set your stack type, set the type of contest you want to get lineups for. You could just do all stacks, or you could do balanced lineups, contrarian lineups, tournament plays, and then you can swap players, lock players, find the lineups you want by looking at the optimal projection for each of these lineups, looking at the ownership, how chalky or contrarian it is, and then finding a good balance between ownership and the projection itself. Save all the ones you want. Once you do that, you can look at your exposures to all of your players and your pitchers and your stack exposures separately, and then upload them straight to CSV. Also, it's optimized for mobile. So if you enjoy making lineups on your phone, you can make all of these lineups straight from your phone with the lineup generator. So I think for $5, you guys will love it. Let's go to this one. Oh, and one thing, Greg, one thing. I had to shout somebody out real quick because we do shout outs here for people who had great days, and we want to give them their recognition. So we had Jake DeWitt earlier this week, I think it was Monday, that took down the 17K, almost 18K. I think it was like his first or second day using the Sims. And then DFS Golden hit us up 2 days ago with another monster one, which was beautiful. Took first in the MLB Sunday Night Showdown. Couldn't have done it without the best data and tools. 13,750 for DFS Golden. So that's back-to-back days, just monster wins with the Sims, with the lineup generator. So wanted to shout him out, Greg, because that's what we do around here.
Yeah, shout out to I didn't even see that one on Twitter.
Yeah, dude. It's a monster.
I'll have to go find it and retweet it.
I think he was using the Sims. That's in the description and in chat as well. You can do a week or a month, one sport, all sport, however you want to play it. But shout out, dude. Good win. Great win for you and Jake. That's what, $31,000 in wins for those guys over the past couple of days. All right, pull up exposures, Jordan. Let's take a look at this to our stacks. On the lineup generator. We're going to go back and forth here. So save 20 of them. And then I just want to see what stack exposures look like. Yeah, go to stack exposure. Oh, no, I'm sorry. That's the main site. You're right. Go to the contest generator. My fault. Go to stack exposures. Do you have any guesses, Greg, of where we're going to get the most exposure?
Well, it would be pretty easy for me to guess because I just saw it on screen.
There you go. Lot to St. Louis today. All right. So the Cardinals have the second highest top stack probability against Kent Tomata. Second highest stack score. We have St. Louis, Detroit against Miles Mikolas. So now it all makes sense. Minnesota, a lot of that, a good amount of Philly, against the left-handed Sandoval. And we are getting around 10% Toronto too against Seth Lugo.
Yeah, Toronto's a stack. I have 8% Toronto stack. So also same with me here. Team I mentioned before, I like being overweight too against Seth Lugo. Then yeah, you see we got no like one team that's showing up in a ton of lineups relative to the other ones, but St. Louis, Detroit, Minnesota, those are the core stacks that the contest generator and the Sims are getting us to here. And the Twins are going to be very popular today. Have you seen the updated ownership on the Twins?
Let me pull, when's the last update?
2 minutes ago. So very recent.
I have not. What is it?
They are now projected for 17% ownership as a team.
Wow. What's the top? I got to sign back in. I got logged out. What's the top stack probability?
16%. So
Okay.
They're also very cheap. 15.6% chance of being a top value stack. So it's what we're saying at the top of the show and why I have to get to some low owned pitchers in my lineups as well. And you've got not the entire field, but what the majority of the field is going to be doing as a lineup build is stacking the Twins because they enable you to play Wheeler and Sale together.
You're right. That is it. That's got to be it, right?
Yeah.
Because you're not stacking Philly getting Wheeler Sale. What's the, what's the top value here on St. Louis? All right, it's not bad. The top value on Minnesota, though, is nuts.
Yeah.
Wow, they're popular. Like, the only ones with better value scores are Oakland and the White Sox. And those are two bad baseball teams. Like, Minnesota's got real power. Detroit's one of the better value teams. St. Louis. Yeah, the ownership coming in on some of these teams is bizarre. Like, Cincinnati's getting virtually nothing against Musgrove. I have some interest there just because they're the fourth lowest owned team, ahead of only the White Sox, Angels without Trout, and Seattle against Chris Sale. And of course, Angels against Zach Wheeler. Kansas City against Bassett. Pittsburgh against Stripling. Wow. Yeah, what about Atlanta? They're so expensive. Lowest value score on the slate. Around 6% owned. They're also in a bad park, and they've been gross lately offensively.
Yeah. So as far as 5-man stacks go, I'm just not getting there today for a number of reasons, but most notably, if you want to make a 5-man stack of the Atlanta Braves, you have to punt with 2 of these terrible pitchers to be able to get to them. Their odds being the top scoring team on the slate, it's only 6.8%, and their top value odds 0.4%. I like these guys as one-offs, and I do think it's a viable secondary 3-man stack. But I only have 2% of the Braves as a 5-man stack. It is so difficult to get there from a salary standpoint.
It really is. AJP said, I don't have Twitter, but won $17K on NBA Saturday, placing third in the $4 and fourth in the 20 using the Sims. The tools are solid. Thanks, guys. That's awesome, man. And if you were rocking the avatar, just create like a burner account and hit us up at Stochastic HOF because you're getting the free month of all of our tools. It's $200 value. So if you're using the Sims, you get another free month entirely free. So if you're using the avatar, otherwise, congrats, man. Love to see that the tools are working for you. All right. What other stacks have we not discussed yet? Talk Minnesota. St. Louis against Kent Tomata is an interesting one. Is he just fully washed at this point?
Looks like it could be. He's been good for a very, very long time now, but if you're good for a very, very long time, it means that you're old and you've been around for a long time. And he's what, like 40 years old at this point? Yeah, something along those lines.
He's 36. Yeah, like he came into the league late. 36. Greg, he's allowing 2.8 home runs per 9, 23% home run to fly ball rate.
What's his velocity now?
I have
his numbers loading right now. I would bet, yeah. His average fastball velocity is sub 90 miles per hour. Now, he was never a hard thrower, but there's thin margins. If you're a guy who's thrown 91, 92 for your entire career, and then all of a sudden you're throwing 89 miles per hour, it's going to be tough sledding. So I think that there's a lot of reason to think that a 36-year-old pitcher who is 36 years old is going to start to regress. And the number one sign there is when you start to see that velocity decline, how it has been for him. His home run to fly ball rate is a career high. He's not generating any strikeouts or swing and misses. His walks are up, probably because he's afraid to throw the ball in the strike zone right now. Yeah, he's a bit of a disaster.
It's bad. And at this point, St. Louis definitely looks good. They definitely look good in this spot. They're not overly expensive. They look pretty good from a value perspective. We have them second highest stack score, positive leverage as well. Are there any other stacks worth getting into here? San Diego against Ashcraft, Detroit against Mikolas, Tampa Bay against Colin Rea, Philly against Sandoval. We talked Toronto against Lugo. Both of us definitely like that spot. Anybody else here?
Yeah, I have my second most rostered offense on the slate is the Chicago White Sox. And it has a lot to do with this ownership on Bailey Ober. Another part of our ownership update, not only did the Twins become more popular, and the Twins are a popular stack that I am still getting a good amount of, but my second most rostered stack is the Chicago White Sox. I really do like that leverage we're getting against Bailey Ober. The White Sox themselves, they're absolutely terrible. It has nothing to do with them as much as I'm getting leverage. It enables me to pay up for Zach Wheeler and Chris Sale and be contrarian at the same time. Those are the two options I feel the best about on the slate. It's just kind of hard to build a lineup that's unique with those guys in it. And the most sensible way to do it while also getting leverage is stacking the White Sox.
Yeah, I think you're right. Man, that's massive, massive leverage. What's Ober's ownership now?
Nearly 30%. Yeah, he's almost as popular as Sale and Wheeler.
Yeah. I mentioned to you before the show, I thought he would be, honestly, as popular as Wheeler on the slate. So I'm not surprised to see it come up. That's a lot. Top three hitters, top three stacks, and a home run pick before we get out of here. Go first on pitchers.
All right. Top pitchers for me.
Oh, well, let's go by tier.
I mean, it's pretty easy to say Wheeler and Sale.
Yeah, so let's go by tier. Let's go by the tiers instead. We'll put Wheeler and Sale in the same tier.
All right, Wheeler over Sale then.
And then just middle tier and lower tier.
Middle tier relative to ownership, Chris Bassett. And then if I'm going cheap, I guess Stripling, but I don't love any of these guys.
Yeah. Wheeler, probably have to go Bassett in that price range. It's not going to be Musgrove for me. I'll take a stab. Mikolas, just given. Did that ownership update with Stripling and Mikolas? Do we have anything? Did it get?
We've got Stripling. It's more or less the same. Stripling 19% and Mikolas at 2%.
Yeah, I'll go Mikolas. Just collect that discounted ownership. How about stacks for you? We'll go expensive, cheap, and leverage stack. Although I guess your leverage stack is going to be your cheap stack because it's going to be the White Sox.
Yeah, my leverage stack is the White Sox. So I'm going to go cheap overall. The Twins, they're popular, but it's for a good reason. If I'm paying up for an offense, I mean, Toronto isn't a pay up offense, but they're more expensive than the other offenses we've talked about.
Yeah. Twins. I like St. Louis. Just so much power given up by Kent Tomato right now. It's absurd. And then give me. Let's go. Oh, Cincinnati against Musgrove. Take a shot on some stacks that are going up against guys that have really struggled with power this year. Do you have any home run picks that you would like to talk about? Maybe one before we go.
Yeah, so let's do, I'll do a DFS one, and then I'll pull up Odd Shopper to see what's showing up on Odd Shopper. For DFS purposes.
By the way, thank Eric Lindquist for $1 for the week of Odd Shopper right now. Promo code DINGER. We did the Dinger Tuesday promo yesterday, and all of us gave out a home run pick. The only one that hit was Eric's, Josh Naylor. And we said, if one of them hits, we'll do a 24-hour flash sale where the entire week is $1. So you get all of the tools, the parlay builder, the market-based tools, the premium Discord, the expert picks, all of that for the entire week for $1. So you want to get in, check it out. It's $1. That's over tonight, but use the promo code DINGER, DINGER over at OddsShopper if you want to jump in. Go ahead.
Yeah, I was going to say, and if you forget about it, Eric will remind you later that his home run prop ended up winning. So if I'm looking at it from a DFS standpoint, I'll go Tommy Pham. Tommy Pham, that was my home run pick for DFS. I have him in 15% of my lineups. He's projected for basically no ownership.
Okay. I like that. I will go. Oh, you know, I think I'm going to go here. This makes sense. And we got to stick with what we've been doing, right? Give me Contreras. Give me Wilson Contreras, St. Louis. Fellas,
and then if I'm looking at a betting pick, Teoscar Hernandez, this is for later, so you're going to have to confirm he's in the lineup, but Teoscar Hernandez is plus 430 to homer on FanDuel compared to other books like DraftKings has him at plus 280. Pinnacle has him at plus 258. So Teoscar Hernandez, a little bit of line shopping value on him to homer. For the Dodgers offense this year, he's been really, really good, which shouldn't be all that much of a surprise because he's been a good hitter basically everywhere he's gone in his career. He's just kind of been a little bit unheralded. And now you're throwing him into the middle of the order where he's just constantly in good hitting situations with hitters on base, good hitters coming up behind him and whatnot. So Teoscar Hernandez plus 430 to homer for later.
Let's go. Appreciate you guys hanging out. As always, fun show. Follow Greg at Ehrenberg DFS, me @Laffy_D. Shout out to Jordan for producing this one. MLB Live Before Lock for the main slate tonight. NBA Live Before Lock, and then catch it all on playback. And after the fact, we'll be hanging there. It's totally free to use. Come hang out, chat with the boys, watch some games, and all of that stuff. So thanks, guys. We'll see you back here for the next one. Good luck today. Peace.